Welcome to Smith Weekly Discussions, an occasional program for our readers and listeners of Smith Weekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine the show notes attached to each of our shows to understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussions, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience at Smith Weekly, including Gordon S., Andy J., Paul M., and Cindy W. Shawn Ryan is our guest today. Shawn is Chief Technical Advisor of White Gold Corp, a Yukon-focused gold explorer that has multiple projects at various stages over a significant land package. Shawn's work led to the discovery of white gold, coffee, and QV projects totaling about 7.5 million ounces gold. White Gold Corp is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol WGO and on the US OTC markets under the symbol WHGOF. Mr. Ryan, welcome to Smith Weekly Discussions.
Thank you.
Shawn, tell us about your early days and how you became interested in prospecting.
It all started back in around 96 when we were up here. We were actually up here picking wild mushrooms for a living back then. And then we decided to try our hat as a prospector because we were living right in the heart of the Klondike gold rush. So you had this kind of big mystery of 13 to 20 million ounces of placer gold being dug up. But there was actually never any hard rock source ever kind of seen. It was an old showing called the Lone Star up on Bonanza, but it was just a small little showing. So I kind of said, well, it actually reminded me of mushrooms. You don't see anything, but eventually the evidence pops up. So then that's when we decided, let's try this systematic research project and look at the whole district as a whole. So that was the beginning of it back in 96.
And what about now? What was it that led you to doing your work? You were prospecting, eventually it grew, and you got involved with the publicly listed natural resource space. What attracted you to this?
Well, I worked in the Timmins camp back in the early 80s. But I worked for the majors, and I kind of understood what kind of evidence they needed to run exploration programs on. So when we started trying this research here, the idea was, your average prospector runs out with a rock hammer and looks for outcrop. And in this district, because it's been non-glaciated, so it's a complete different animal from the Timmins camp or the Shield, there's hardly any rocks. There's less than 2% outcrop exposure. So if you start doing the math, it's 1 in 10,000 to find discovery, and then you have only 2% outcrop exposure. What's the probability I'm going to find that 1 in 10,000 with the 2%? So I said, no, we got to try something different here. So, and then eventually one guy said, Shawn, the days of you coming out of the bush with a rock and gold in it and getting a quick option deal are kind of coming to a close. We want to see a mineralized system. And I said, oh, great. Now we only have 2% outcrop exposure, and you want me to find a mineralized system. So ends up that the double-edged sword was there's hardly any rock, but there was lots of soil. And the way the soil worked here, because it was non-glaciated, all the kind of the metal just kind of diffused downward, kind of like the placer gold. So then what I was able to do is I put a few pits in and then started assaying at different levels from 6 inches where your B horizon is to 1.5 to 2.5 to 3.5 feet. And then I quickly realized all the metal just keeps climbing up as you go down deeper until you hit this bedrock interface, which is actually only about 5 or 6 feet below. And it's not a hard rock like we hit in the Shield. It's the decomposed bedrock. So the big trick ended up being pulling I call it a tulip planter, but it's a soil auger, but it looks like a tulip planter. Yeah, and you just dig deeper holes down 2.5 to 3 feet or 2.5 until you hear the soil auger grind. And that's where you take your soil sample and then you run them through the lab. But what I did differently is we systematically kind of did ridge by ridge. And then once we located a soil anomaly, and it's about a 2% probability, so give you an idea. If I do 100 kilometers of ridges, I'm lucky to come up with 2 kilometers of soil anomaly. And then I go in and I start gridding that off on a tighter space, and then on a phase 2, and then follow up if you need on a phase 3. So, but the idea was, instead of looking at one little piece of property, I ended up looking at the district as a whole. And since basically it was 2001 when we realized how well the soil system was working, and now I've got in this district probably over 400,000 soils that our team has gathered on different projects that have optioned out to customers, or even areas that we haven't even staked as we do our research. So that's kind of how the development of locating these mineralized systems and then eventually finding the needles in these haystacks, as I call it, how it came about here.
Well, interesting stuff, an interesting approach, and adding in the reward of the publicly traded sector with investors and so forth really adds another piece to that entire package. Take us back for a moment to the discoveries at Coffee and White Gold. Can you share with us some of your keys to success? What problems occurred, and then what lessons did you learn during your discovery advancement work?
Well, the big problem that we have, there's like a couple of things that we face as human beings or as explorationists, is that we have good ideas, but sometimes we get a little bit too smart for ourselves, and we start skipping steps. So if you do a soil program, you may not, and you're doing it at 50 meters. Sometimes we go good enough and we jump a step, and we either drill it, or we don't trench it, or we don't do even detailed soils. So my job has been over the last few years is to actually kind of hold back the market, because the market, the problem with we faced, when the heyday, like 2010, 11, when everything was going, you walked into Toronto and said, I need $2 million, and I think I'm going to have a drill target in 2 years from now, or 3. I'll take 2 years to actually figure it out, and I'm going to drill it, perfect target on year 3. They tell you forget it, because they would rather hear you walk through the door and say, look, I've got a soil anomaly, we're just going to drill it, we're going to blow $2 million on it, and give her. The market would give them the money, mostly because the guys giving the money was making 7%. The guys running the company, half the time they were kind of taking a large management fee out of the pot, and nobody really cared. So what I ended up doing was, like I call it, my game is the royalty game, because I hold royalties on all these things. And to give you an idea of the detailedness, like the latte on the coffee, that was a ridge and spur discovery. That means we're running down the ridge top and down the side slope. And I'm taking a soil every 50 meters. And only one soil hit on, it was nothing, bang, and then nothing. So that one soil that's on 50 meters was actually the tip of the iceberg that highlighted 1.5 million ounces under that. So we went in and gridded it and seen the structure. But the point is these things are that subtle, and you could be 5 meters away and still blow it drilling. So that's kind of our biggest downfall, that companies try to, I call it, jumping they're skipping steps and trying to drop the black ball. This was a pool game on the first go around. And I'm kind of going, no, set your shots up, do your systematic work, and then what we're doing is we're lowering our probability of failure, because we don't really know if there's a deposit there. But if we don't do the job right, we're going to fail. So if we do it right, and so that's why I like to add quite a few of the science, like I call it unbiased science. Geochemistry is unbiased. Geophysics is unbiased. And then you get these structure guys, and usually they're kind of unbiased because they're just measuring cracks. And then you bring in the geology side, and usually the rocks are, black and white. They are kind of what they are. So the idea is that you have to have them 4 components into picking out that drill target. And once you line up all them 4, then your probability of success is at its max. And then it's the assay gods that'll tell the tale. So, but that's what we're supposed to do. And I'd say 70% of the companies don't do that. They believe in just geophysics, or they believe in just in geology. So, but my job as a researcher, that's really what I am, is to actually line up them stars that we get the highest max probability of a successful hole.
Well, it's been a good method, because it seems to work out quite well for you. And you seem to always be onto something that's going to turn up, and even capital markets that might be a little low on sentiment and so forth. There's always something that you're working on that's has good potential to come out. So I want to talk about the broad market, natural resources, specifically gold. Where are we today, and what is your take on this market, and how do we get sentiment, capital, and higher gold prices back?
The market, like, see, I never really kind of paid too much attention to it, because to give you an idea, when I staked the white property that turned into 1.5 million ounces, that was back in 2003, and gold was $300. So, but the idea was, it takes us years to actually uncover good projects. So if you kind of wait for the gold price to shoot up, then you're kind of starting at the, like you're starting a little bit late in the game. So the idea is that, you got to keep plugging away and coming up with these projects. So it's kind of, but as the market goes, like you can't, as an explorationist, you can't get too much. You think gold's going to 15 or 1,600 bucks. It might, but like as I look at it right now, gold's past, or I'm not sure what it is today, but it was past 1,800 bucks Canadian, last week. So you're kind of going, even at the height of 2011 there, when gold was 1,900, well, the Canadian prices were close to the same, so it wasn't that much higher. So it's still worth it for us in Canada, like, to find gold deposits here, because we're still getting a good price for it. So that's kind of, but I don't try to get caught up in the actual, where is the gold price going? And that's why we're trying to steer this company, White Gold, as a different company. This is like, it should be designed to basically work this district for the next 25 to 30 years. And if we make these discoveries like we're doing, we have partners like Kinross and Agnico, the idea is that we spin out these projects, and then US paper and White Gold gets spin coat paper. But the idea is that we have such a big portfolio, and that's what the need is here, is we probably have 80% of the haystacks of the soil anomalies, because I know where they are, and because I've covered this district. So we own 40% of the district, but it's probably closer to 80% or a little bit higher of the actual soil targets in this district.
Right. Well, that's a good perspective, and I think people should keep that in mind. And these things don't happen overnight. Certainly, I think we're in a really interesting place in the market, very, very similar to what was going on around 2001 last time, before things started to pick up and you had a nice move for a period of time. So I think we're in an interesting place from an investor standpoint. On that subject, you've been through a number of cycles in this sector. You've seen prices go up and down. You've seen the metal prices go up and down. You've seen the share prices go up and down. What do you say to investors in this space that have taken a beating and have had their patience shaken?
Right now, there's no, like, from a gold explorers out there, we're not actually finding too much. And that's what's interesting. There's a ton of money being spent. And so, like, I could hear what their concerns are, because I'd be scratching my head too, because if nobody's getting put more money into it, doesn't mean you're finding anything. And that's what we found out in the 2011 rush. So it's kind of, but that's why now what I'm trying to say is, with this White Gold model, it's a model, it's a business model. When we initially started the company, part of the model was we're not going to focus on one property. And that's what I brought it to Agnico's attention, is that I want a business, like I came up with a business plan when I packaged all these 17 or 18 projects, put them into one basket. I created a super company, in a sense, that owns part of, well, they ended up 40% of the district. But the idea is that let's not get too smart for ourselves. So what I wanted to do was systematically, because everybody had their favorite property. The interesting part about that, we don't even talk about that property today, and that's only 2 years later. It's still there, like that's called the Betty Project, sitting next to the coffee. But this idea of kissing all the frogs and figuring out where the princesses were, instead of focusing on one first big discovery, led us to this Vertigo discovery and led us to a few other discoveries. So this model of doing this regional, and this is what the luxury of nobody else has, in a sense. Like, most juniors have one property, and that's it. They got to beat that to very end. We have we have over 22,000 claims, so there's probably about 25 different projects. So the idea is that we're methodically working and increasing. So that's what I work it on a probability game. And so that if I go in and do one round of soils and we get good response, okay, let's go in and do another round, detail, more good response. Now add some geophysics in there. Now maybe add some probing or there's some trenching. And if it keeps adding, eventually when you drill that hole, you've kind of, again, climbed up that risk ladder. So, but that's what White Gold got kind of unique here, is that we've got such a big district, but the philosophy is like, don't fall into one trap. As I say, one trap, one property. And that's what happened with Underworld. My first discovery, made that Underworld discovery that was going real well, 2008 and 9. And I said, I think I have its big brother on the other side of the hill called the coffee. And they didn't even really want to believe it. Like, really? Like, no. So, and then here it was. But because they were focused just on that one golden saddle, they missed the opportunity of the coffee. So that's what we're trying to eliminate now, is by looking at all the cards almost at once. And that's kind of what I tell people. This is like playing 25 card games, going to the casino. The probability, and that's why I did this, I believe there's at least minimum one deposit. So if I sold this to 10 different juniors and took paper, I'd have 9 losers and 1 winner. So what I said was, why don't we, if we believe in our own, as I say, Kool-Aid that we're drinking here, is that there's got to be at least one deposit, high probability of 2, a good chance at 3, and I won't be surprised at 4, because we're talking over the next 10 years or 12 years. Then there should be a good return for White Gold shareholders over the long term here.
Well, it sounds like a consistent strategy to me. I want to go on to another subject, ground truth exploration. For the audience that doesn't know, kind of give us an overview of the advantages over conventional techniques and competitor technology. What are you bringing to the table that's really fascinating about ground truth exploration?
Well, ground truth is run by actually my wife and foreman, and I'm kind of in the background, but as the researcher. And the idea was in 2011, when the market crashed, everybody left the district. I said, we did a terrific job so far, because it led to the white, the coffee, the QV. But I said, but we could do better. There was still more ways to improve our system. So we literally went back to the research table and kind of came up with these different ideas. And they're more simple questions. Like, most gold deposits are related to a structure. How do we find the crack? How do we find the crack with certainty, and that we believe it? So we ended up finding this. It's IP, but instead of 25-meter electrode spacings to 50, everybody was looking deeper. I said, let's go shallow, and I call it top-down exploration, because we have the soil anomaly, or the rock and float, because this is the unique thing of this district. We're finding things on surface. We're not looking for deep things yet. So the idea is that this new DC resistivity that came out of the environment world with 5-meter electrodes, 84 back-to-back, my resolution was 2.5 meters now. So now I could see a crack that's 2 meters, and I could follow that down to at least 80-meter depths from surface. So that was one of the kind of part of the breakthroughs. And then we ended up, instead of trenching, we got this geoprobe, and it's just a hammer drill that goes down to 6 feet down to the bedrock interface and gets me a plug of rocks and dirt. And that's what we do before we drill it. And I call that polishing the target off, because now I'm putting a hole down every 5 meters, just like the electrode spacings we're doing. And the soils are probably sometimes around 50, 25s, and we're detailed as 10 this year on our vertigo. And then that actually pins the target. And we use with that as an XRF. So now that guys in the field, they're kind of hunting at the same time, like they could actually see it. They could understand the gold arsenic response. The arsenic responds quite well. So I call it hunting. And then what we did is we came up with this RAB, rotary air drill, that was out there, and they tested, they were using it on the coffee with an RC system, but we kind of converted it into a RAB, which is rotary air blast, and it's just a 3.5-inch hole that chips the rocks and blows it back up the hole. And again, what we incorporated with that was every 5 feet, that's what you get per rod, we XRF the powder. And the powder works way better with an XRF than hitting that as a little piece of point on the rock. So then that added, okay, now we're being able to think live in the field again. And then what we added kind of a cool, basically, twist to it. Everybody said, Shawn, that's good. Rad's cheap. It's about a third the price of diamond drilling, but you can't get structure from it. So then we came up with 2 years ago, maybe 3 now. It's a downhole televiewer, but it's an optical televiewer that you put down the hole, and it gives you an oriented picture of the inside of the hole. And sure enough, you could see all your veining and all your alteration. You could see everything in that hole. And then, so the idea is that we came up with this, how to do the best bang for your buck for drilling. It's this basically recon drilling team that they go in and drill 1 hole a day. So they get 80 to 100 meters a day with the rod. We XRF the powder coming out. And at 7 o'clock, they drop the downhole televiewer down the hole. And they're done by 8:30. By 10:30 in the evening, we actually have that downhole televiewer picture spliced with the XRF data together. And now that we send that to the geos, and so we could have like the command center in Dawson, and the geos will get that, and they could have 2 rigs out there on 2 different properties. But now and then the drill goes, everybody goes to bed at night. So we only do 1 shift, and that gives the geos the evening to actually scratch their head and go, do we continue on with this drilling or not, or do we modify it? But that kind of real-time data would normally take us 6-7 weeks to get that data. So now we're getting that on a nightly time schedule. So that kind of advantage, and that's what Agnico liked about my original let's kiss all the frogs kind of mentality, but with this technique. So now this was the ultimate, I call it like the ultimate A-team, or the commando team, of how do you systematically hit a project. And we also do drones part of that. So that's why we call this model, or this method, drones to drills, where we could do from droning, detailed soils, probing, DC resistivity, rad drilling, right to the end like that. So that's so we're working roughly on $2011, we're about 30 cents on the dollar compared to how they were working back then, somewhere between 25 and 30 cents.
Fascinating. And does the technology, does Ground Truth work exclusively with White Gold Corp, or is it just contract by contract, or what's the structure set up there?
The bulk of their work, like originally, Ground Truth was just for my customers. That's how I developed them, because I put the R&D money into it. Well, they put money into it. Also, both of us did. But the idea is that, but now they're allowed to contract to other companies. So they've moved into Alaska now and working for companies there. And then they do work for other customers up here in the Yukon. But I'd say the bulk, 80% of their work right now is for White Gold.
So let's get into White Gold Corp. I want to start for a moment about the structure and management of the company. Who are the key people at White Gold, and who are the notable shareholders on the roster?
So what I did at the beginning, before White Gold was even I thought about it, but we didn't know what we were doing yet. I basically picked up Jody Gibson as a geologist to work with me pre this White Gold. And the idea was he was the one that was drilling off the underworld deposit, the Golden Saddle. So, and then he was working with Centerra around here. So he had some really good familiarities with the gold projects up here and the Yukon itself. And we worked really well together. So I said, okay, let's get him in the picture. So then he come in, and then eventually what I did is I brought this whole package to the Power One group, the Patrick Capitalist group, and we dealt together in the past on other deals. So then we said, okay, well, let's look at this as a big project. So then that was the money group. We got the geology group, and then we went over and we talked to Rob Carpenter, that was the CEO of Kaminak at the time of the discovery. So then we got him as part of the technical advisor and as a director. So now we've kind of covered the two main geos from the district. We've got the finance group, we've got the ground truth group doing the exploration work, and I'm still sitting on I'm hanging in with them because my game here, I don't get a paycheck out of this deal, but if I make a new discovery, it's the royalty. So that's kind of what I'm in the game for. So we're not leaving here too soon here.
Yeah, no, I think that's good because you kind of get the back end of the deal.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of up to you in the front here to come up with that discovery so you can pay yourself. And I that's actually a very interesting, unique approach, not used too often in this space. Can you highlight just for a moment the notable shareholders on the roster? I want to say you mentioned Kinross and Agnico.
So what kind of the cool part at the beginning was we approached Agnico. Well, we approached most of the majors to see who wanted at the beginning of White Gold in 2016, and everybody, there was like a lot of positive response. Everybody kind of wanted in, and this was wanted into this $15 million to throw in for this 3-year regional program. So we ended up picking Agnico mostly because they had the best, what I consider the best exploration. They were smart guys. They're good bush guys, or most of them were from Val-d'Or area. I'm from Timmins, so I could relate right away. But they were good, down-to-earth people, but explorationists, and you could see they've been with the company for 25, 30 years. So, and when we presented data, they were all there. It wasn't just one or two guys. There was a group. So I like that feedback because that's what, I'm working in a vacuum sometimes on my own. So so they came in for 19.9. And then the next spring, we said, why don't we, because we knew Kinross was looking at probably unloading the assets of the underworld. So we said, well, let's go see if they would want to become a partner, 19.9, and throw their project in. And so we paid them some cash and shares, and they became 19.9% owners also. So then now and then management owns, I think we own roughly around 22 or 25%, somewhere in that. So it was, so that's kind of the double-edged sword again. What happens is that there's a big chunk owned. Well, it looks like they got about 40% float, rather, shareholders, but it's, we got the kind of, so every time we go to raise money, that's the kind of cool thing. Agnico and Kinross are maintaining their position all the time. So they take care of 40% of the money we're trying to raise. And then the other flip side of that, or the cool side, that's what I like. These are the guys that are probably going to put the thing into production. And we told them, we're not holding anybody as favorites. So we want you guys to work together. If we make a discovery, you guys, both put it together, put it into production together. They have to figure that out themselves. But the idea is we weren't going to, that's what we were hoping, is that they would both work together on these discoveries if it's warrants putting it into production there.
So when you guys went out and approached these various mid-tier and majors, what was it that got their attraction? Was it the fact that Shawn Ryan was in charge and it was a big land package, or what was it that really did it for them?
I think they recognize the district, again, 20 million ounces of placer, no known source ever seen. But I think they also, so that allures them from an exploration. But the big one is, I already had I think at that point I had 350,000 souls or somewhere in that neighborhood in this district. So I had numerous airborne surveys. So I had about 25 million from the juniors that originally I optioned the ground to coming back. So what I presented to them was, let's look because I used to work with the majors, let's tackle this kind of like a major would, and they don't do it anymore. But now we have this database of soils and geophysics. Let's bring a structure guy on board. Let's bring a high-level geophysicist, and let's take a big overlook at the whole district. And that's what kind of got Agnico and these guys going, and mostly Agnico saying, we like this approach. It's a pure regional. So the game is that we are going to take no more than 25 holes per project when we start evaluating. So once we get to the drilling stage, we're ready, you get a 25-hole budget. And that's it. And the idea is that, and if it looks like it's got some legs after 25 holes, then we put that into a phase 2. And a phase 2 might be the second year. And that's so this is kind of what's going on with the Vertigo. It came into phase 2 that we follow up with a bigger diamond drill program. And the original idea was not to actually throw a ton of money, but now everybody got excited at this. So we're putting $7 million on the Vertigo this year. But that's the phase 2. And then if it has legs, this is the interesting part, then they have to either, that's when we're looking at the SpinCo idea. Now, management still got to figure out which way they're really taking this. But they're going to do a version of something like that, because the idea is to get that asset out of White Gold and then let the majors finance that as a separate vehicle. And that way we're not diluting White Gold itself, and White Gold has the rest of its properties, instead of a complete buyout that happened with Underworld. That was what happened with Underworld when they got bought out by Kinross. People don't realize they actually got bought out partially because the JP Ross project. And so that's the one that we're now just making this big Vertigo discovery, because the data in 2009, at the end of September, when they had drilled off the pit that was over 1 million ounces in the Golden Saddle, we did a big regional. I convinced management to fund a big regional on my JP Ross property that I just optioned to them. And when that data came back in December, we did 6,000 soils in October. It looked actually better than the white. And so that's why Kinross got all excited and said, by 2010, or in March, and said, let's take Underworld out for the white, but also for the JP Ross, because they wanted to poke the holes in there and keep it quiet, because it looked like this was going to blow up pretty good. And then, because they were trying to keep the lid on the district as a whole, because they were the only ones around at the time. And then we made the discovery drill hole on the Coffee, and then the rest is history. So, but the idea is that that's what I'm trying not to fall into, that trap of losing all this ground based on one discovery in the company.
So tell us about the projects. Which projects are you really favoring at this point, and what is the objective for the team in terms of discovery size that meets to your satisfaction?
Well, this is it. We're in a kind of a unique scenario right now, is that since we have the white deposit itself at Golden Saddle, we picked it up. It had 1 million ounces a couple of years ago. Originally, Underworld had 1.5 million, got downgraded to 1 million once Kinross got it. And then we went back at it and actually dropped a few more, started putting more infill drill holes. And now we have it back up to 1.5 million ounces. But what we're trying to do, we got about a 5,000 meter drill program for that. And we have 2,500 meters of rad drilling, or RC drilling, to fall on other targets. So that we're going to scratch that. We'll see how far we get it. So what we've got here is what I've put everybody on high alert here, is that this might be potentially our last season on the white property in the JP Ross. So what we're doing now is something really different, and it's a really fun, it's got me, the data is just coming in now. This is what I ended up doing. Because of this Vertigo discovery, and that Vertigo is a super high grade vein, and it's about 10, it's from 3 meters to up to 15 meters wide of ore that's up to 2 ounce material. It's the Vertigo, on the JP Ross property, what it is it's the first sign of where the placer gold is coming from. And it's the first time that we could actually touch rocks in the hill and see the same rocks in the placer creeks. So we know there's a direct correlation through some scientific, they did some gold grain analysis, and the gold had bismuth, and the rocks in the hill have bismuth. That's the only spot that they ever found bismuth in gold grains. But now we're dealing with the placer miners at the bottom, and we just came out of there the other day, and we could see some nice altered rocks that are the same ones we're drilling on the hill. So that uniqueness, okay, that's a cool thing. So what I ended up doing was, but we found that on 10 meter space soils. We tripped over it on 50, but then we eventually realized we had to go down to 10 meters. And so what I just did on the JP Ross, because we have a big soil package, like it's lots of soil anomalies on there. So we ended up doing 54 mini grids that are basically 10-meter soils on 50-meter line spacing, super high detail. And we're doing so that's 54 on the JP Ross, and we have 20 grids going down, or 16 actually on the white. So I have 75 detailed grids going in right now, and so that means that I'm not looking for the gold target. We already know where they are. I'm actually pulling now. I'm getting it set up for more detail, and so that's what we just did in June. So now all that data is flowing in now, and we're gonna basically start probing that, like doing our geophysics, and then basically probing it. So that'll take us about 3 weeks here. Then we're gonna start. We have a budget of roughly, I think it's about 45 RC holes. No, it's actually 55 RC holes that we're going to hit both projects with. And the idea is, like, out of the 75 grids, statistically, I should have 2 good targets per grid. So then we're going to flush them out, and then we're only going to drill, like, the best of the best. So my take is, from the mushroom world, find one mushroom, there's more. These things should start popping up out of this, like out of these soil databases. So we should have a pile of brand new targets. So the guys are drilling the Vertigo. They're going to fence drill that thing off, and they've got 10,000 meters of drilling set up for that. But my job is all the perimeter on the outside, like outside of the main drilling zone. So same thing on the white. They're drilling more of this Golden Saddle West that they found. They're actually going to eventually stitch that with the Golden Saddle, probably, with some of these holes they're drilling. And then my job is to hit the perimeter. And mostly what I'm trying to do is, because if this is my last year, my job, or like at least last year on these properties, my job is to actually find a whole bunch of new discoveries, so that we get paid like bonus. If they have one price set for the Vertigo and the white, well, everything else that I find, there'll be bonus. Like, so that should increase our takeout price if it comes that way. So, but this is, I have never had this is like going to the Gerties, because we have a gambling hall here. Yeah, and you're playing 75 card games at once, and you're bound to hit in a few of these. So that's the probability game.
Well, I'm sure you're placing your bets just about right. So with the extensive land package, is there any joint venture interest, or is that something that you do not want at White Gold, and you guys have got the region covered yourself?
Yeah, like you see, like we have the main, like, like there's nobody, there's really, like, see the joint venture. See, what I'm trying to do is, if we find a discovery, you spin that asset out, and then that asset, then if people want to joint venture that or work with that asset without money, that's kind of the model. So, but with Agnico and Kinross, it kind of keeps people like a little bit, like, there's not too many people knocking on the door trying to do a joint, because they own 40%. So we kind of got our partners that we need, and that's why this model of spin out that asset, and then, because, like, see, like if you understand the game, like the white, the underworld discovery was like it was the ultimate for a junior. They picked it up in 2007. By 2009, they had 121 holes, but they only had about 25 million spent on the property, and then they got bought out for 140. Like it was like bang bang, and they were out. So, but the coffee took 85 million. So it was a lot of money, and it was like almost 300,000, 265,000 meters of drilling by the time they got taken out. So the idea is that it's a long game sometimes. So we have so many projects that's why I say we spin it out. If they want to pump in 50 or 60 million into delineating that and pick it up, well, that's better in another set of assets. So we're going to spin out.
And as things start to come about and more discoveries start to come up throughout this process that you've laid out, what happens strategy for White Gold, the company, as some of these might get spun out to some of the other folks involved, and so forth, some of the discoveries move on to other owners. And as White Gold Corp keeps building up the discoveries ahead, is there an end game in terms of White Gold? Does someone come along and say, you know what, enough, there's enough discoveries here that you guys have got, plus all the perspectives, we're going to try to take you out? Are you open to that? Or what's the end game for White Gold?
I'm hoping that, see, it's kind of interesting. The government is putting a road right down, though. Like they already have partial roads going through, like one-lane roads, bush roads going through. But now they're talking about, making haul grade roads from Dawson all the way to the Coffee Project. So that goes right through the heart of most of our claims. It's going right through. So it's kind of, from my long-term perspective, I want White Gold to stay in this game for 25 years, because this is like, to me, this is like owning 40% of the Timmins camp. Like if you can own 40% of Timmins camp today, you'd be a hero. So the idea is that that's what we have in there, 80% of the soil and all this. So the long-term thing, in this road going through, means now that gloves are off. I don't have to find 2 million ounces once we get one going into production. If I find 300,000 ounces or 500,000 ounces, we could truck that to the mine. So that's what I'm trying to get at, is that I'm hoping, that's what I tell my wife. She says, well, how are you getting out of the game? Because I'm not selling paper. So me and the Power One, Pat DeCapel, made a deal together that we're hanging on for the end. So it's Spinco, Spinco, Spinco. So if it spins, we get 4 discoveries and you get 4 Spincos, well, you're making money every Spinco. So that's but what I like about this is our biggest problem with exploration has been flash, juniors flash up and flash down when the market crashes. They have no long-term tenacity sometimes. So this is like White Gold is kind of like a major mining company. When I was in Timmins, I used to work for Kid Creek, and they had the mine, and we were the exploration team. And they're there for the long term. So and that's kind of what I'm trying to get with White Gold, that if we have the explorationists, guys that have been working on these projects, for the last few years, and they continue on, new discoveries, then this White Gold should go on for, if we do this right, another 25 years without getting taken out. Mostly because we have Kinross and Agnico as our partners, so they own 40%, so they would have to agree to that too. And I don't think they'd agree to someone else taking that whole package out. But it's so that's kind of what I was trying to set this company up as a long-term force, because our haystacks, like we drilled some targets on the dime 2 years ago. Well, we hit 20 or 25 meters of 0.6 grams from surface. That wasn't in the money. So we walked away, but we're not dropping the property. We'll come back to that maybe in 2 more years or 3 years and start drilling deeper holes into that once we understand the district even better. And that's kind of when the dominoes, that snowball starts building, because your data and now your discovery rates go up. So that's when I'm trying to keep this thing in, instead of, selling the whole thing and then the new guys come in and everybody starting new. So, because I own the royalty. So I want the best of the best working on this for the next 25 years.
Well, it sounds pretty attractive to me, and an interesting strategy that you're laying out. Is there anywhere else in the world you'd go to explore? And if so, what jurisdictions do you like?
People want North America, right? And so that's what, but for me to go to the Timmins camp, where I was raised, my probability of finding something there is low, because everything is deep. So that's what I picked. Like the Yukon, everything's on surface, and same with Labrador now. And that we're finding all these gold is lighting up right with our soil samples right on surface. So it's kind of for that part of the world, from an exploration, it looks like it's got a lot of upside there.
Shawn, what do you like to do when you're not out working the grounds of the Yukon?
Well, that's what I just did. We just came from the mushroom patch. That's where the irony is, people chuckle about that, but that's how I learned mushrooms after the 89 flow-through crash. We left Timmins because everybody was out of work, and we ended up picking wild mushrooms for the next 8 years. And it's just like it was the pine mushrooms on the West Coast that sold to Japan on the stock commodity market. and then the spring morels are for the European group. And it was kind of interesting. It was a lot of the parallels that you did the same research and slope aspects and elevation. But that's what ironically gave me the confidence to tackle the looking for gold in Dawson, was that if you could predict with a high probability where a mushroom is going to grow, and some of these things don't grow. The spring morel here doesn't grow it's only after a fire. So the last time that mushroom grew was 200 years ago. So you have to predict a crop that's going to come. You can't see. But if you use all the science, and if you put science to it, you could actually predict how many pounds are going to actually come off of that hill. So once I did that, that's when I said, well, okay, if I could predict how mushrooms are going to grow, we should certainly be able to find gold. So that was but it took a long time, and that's the naivety of me. As my wife says, you always make it too simple. But it was this systematic approach. Just hit keep your head down, one soil at a time, but each soil is as important as the next. That's why for the soil team, you have to take a 2.5-week course to work for ground truth. And literally, we teach you how to be almost like a military commando, because I have to throw you out of the helicopter, teach you how to use a chainsaw, how to use an axe, how to camp, and how to take a good soil, and all these parameters. Yeah, it's fun. Like, this is, it's still like a cool business for young people to come into, because it's the closest thing is like the military, but you don't get shot here. You could just run around and no, it's a good game here. So, but it's the Yukon, and you know what? Like, it's still virgin, and that's what if that's what caught people's imagination in 2011 or 10 when I gave a talk once in Toronto and talked about my methods, and then some guy stood up and asked a question here and he says, are you telling me that if we go to the Yukon and stake our claim and go do soils, we would be the first to do that? I said, yep. There's a high probability. Most of this area has not been looked at, and that's what kind of triggered everybody. Holy crow! Like, this new gold rush, it was eventually over that 2-year window. There was over 200,000 claims staked. Like, I think this year there might have been 500. So that's what the whole point is it got everybody going. But the Yukon is still like this. So this vertigo discovery we're making right now, like, there's placer gold right below us. There's placer gold on the other side of the hill. Like, and you're laughing now. I just talked to another placer guy, and he's on the other side of the hill, and he's finding good gold. And you're kind of going, like, if this was the Timmins camp or anywhere close to a population, this would have been found 50, 60 years ago. And, like, welcome to the Yukon. Like, you're right there. It's like, so that's why it's fun, because it's all new. Nobody's done this. So when you go to a hilltop and you walk that hill, like, you're the first guy to actually think of gold. But that's why I say what we do is, I'm a prospector, but I don't really like prospecting. What I like to do is get the data, set it all up, and then after 2 years, you fly out the helicopter, you walk that ridge, and in an hour you have the rabbit. You have the gold in your hands because you took your time to set it up to drop the black ball. And that's what this game's about, is getting the highest probability you're going to success, because most people on the first pass, if they go out and grab some rocks, they give up if they don't see the gold. And that's what happened with the coffee project. I had 20 different geos all try to get gold off of that discovery area, and not one of them had gold. And they say, and I said, well, that's fine. I didn't find any gold there neither in the rocks. And they're going, well, what the hell? But we got it in the soils. So we eventually found it, but everybody else was ready to give up because they didn't get it on the first pass. And that's my take here. It takes time here. So anyways, you got to believe in these things exist out there. That's my point here.
Well, it sounds like you're committed, probably till the point where you can't do it anymore. And there's probably nothing else that you'd rather do than this, from the way you explain it. So I want to ask, wrapping up here.
Yeah.
Why should investors look at White Gold Corp today? What would you say to potential investors that are listening?
Well, for one, White Gold is different from everybody else. It's not designed as it's not a one-trick pony. We've got 23 projects. They're all in one district. So what we got is company, it's kind of like a super company in a sense, because our focus is in this district. And so that's the idea, is that, and we own 80% of the known soil anomalies out there out of like 400 plus soil samples, like so 400,000 plus soil samples. So, and then with this idea that not going to be a one trick pony for that, it gets bought out and it's gone. No, it's designed to spin out, and basically, because I'm hoping that we have at least 4 discoveries. What I'm hoping to have is, you see, we should hit, now this white is moving along real good, this vertigo, but the vertigo is 1 out of about 8 targets. And I'm hoping to prove the other targets all have just as equal, so this summer. But the idea is that if we do our magic right, and then there will be something happening this winter, because now we're approaching management idea of spin it out. So they're discussing, but Agnico and Kinross want to see what we're going to find on this vertigo. So then if that happens, well, then there might be a quick, basically, money-making opportunity this winter coming, based on just this golden saddle the ore in the golden saddle discovery, and it's been there for a while. But this new golden saddle west, there'll be ounces. This vertigo proves that it's got more legs. Then we should see some sort of spin out by this winter. And then next year, the best target that everybody wanted from 3 years ago, we drilled that last year, poked some holes in it. That was called the Betty, and we hit 50 meters of over a gram in there. We'll get back to that one. So, and then we have some really good projects even closer to town. We haven't poked the hole yet, and people are going like, why not? And I'm going, no, we're going to keep that card for a while. So we have enough projects to do that. And that's what's kind of cool about the company. So my take is like, this is a unique company, got the majors as the backing. And the idea is that we have the land package and we have the team. So then it's, as I say, there's no excuse now.
And how can folks reach out to the company for more information?
I guess we have like White Gold Corp's got a website, but then there's the guys in Toronto, and like you followed they got their phone numbers to follow that up. But that's the kind of like, so like, that's the big thing, that the type of the news releases that are going to come out in this. Like, we've got like 22,000 meters of drilling, like, so like we have 10,000 on the vertigo, 5,000 on the white. So then I got 25 holes, 2,500 meters for the white property for all these 16 grids that we're doing, these detailed grids. And then we have, I've got another 35,000 meters of drilling for the vertigo. So I got 35 holes on that, on these 54 mini grids. And the idea is that if we hit something and it looks really good, and we're gonna require more money. The company has $17 million right now in the treasury. Our budget is $13 million. So I've got the management on high alert that come middle of August, if we think we need another $1 million or $2 million for more drilling on some of these good targets, that we have that in the bank. And the idea is that these RAB drills can drill right to, because they're air drills, they could drill right through to the end of October if we have to. So we have a lot of time to find these, get a bunch of more discoveries. So yeah, no, it's a different ride. It's a different junior. It's more of a long-term holder, because you should see some, return after return if I do my job right. Find 3 or 4 of these things. So.
Well, that sounds interesting, and appreciate the additional info there. And the website, just looking at it here, is whitegoldcorp.ca. Shawn, it's been a complete pleasure to speak with you today. We hope you come back soon.
Yep. No, thanks. No, it was fun here. Yeah.